So God of War is coming to the PC next year. Sackboy, a big adventure, was leaked in the SteamDB database as well, indicating that it too is making the jump to PC soon. Additionally, an NVIDIA GeForce Now database leak seemed to indicate that there would be several more games coming from Sony to PC in the future, including PS5 games such as Demon's Souls. All of this is on top of a surprisingly voluminous flow of Sony first-party games on the PC in the last few years. Detroit Become Human, Horizon Zero Dawn, Death Stranding, Days Gone all came to the PC in this period. Sony bought Nixxes, a development studio notable for porting console games to PC earlier this year. And just recently, Sony officially introduced the PlayStation PC label to the world, conclusively making it clear that they plan on continuing to bring their games to the platform going forward. It's been fascinating to see how observers, many of whom were convinced something like this would never happen, have gradually adjusted their expectations and stances to allow for these developments. Originally, as mentioned, it was believed that something like this would never happen. Detroit coming to PC was more because Sony had terminated its relationship with Quantic Dream, surely, and the IP no longer held any value to them. Death Stranding coming to PC was surely because Sony and Kojima enjoyed a special relationship. Horizon Zero Dawn coming to the PC was surely because the Decimal Engine had already been ported to the PC for Death Stranding, so why not? Days Gone coming to the PC was probably because it had flopped, so why not make more money out of it? Just a few months ago, a lot of PlayStation fans had formally adjusted these expectations as well. Sony will probably port similar to mid-tier IPs to the PC. But flagship stuff, such as God of War, will never come to PC. As of right now, they are at that point where they think PS4 games may get ported to PC, but PS5 ones won't, which, going by the aforementioned SteamDB and NVIDIA leaks, means they are in for another round of expectation adjustment in the relatively short-term future. The point of this isn't exactly to gloat, but to thoroughly establish that Sony games are coming to the PC. That is a fact, a reality. Sony has slowly been working up to this. More and more major first-party titles are coming to the platform. It has acquired a whole developer to help with the process. It has created a whole publishing label to help with that process. And yes, based on leaks, there's a lot more coming in the near future. The question is no longer if a PlayStation first-party title will come to the PC, the question is when. And the when question is significant because of the counterpoint posed by PlayStation's biggest competition in the console market, Xbox. You see, a few years ago, Xbox made a really bold commitment. Every single Xbox Game Studios game would come to a PC going forward. Day and date at launch. Effectively, this would mean that the Xbox would have no true exclusives. All of its games would be shared at the very least with the PC. It flew in the face of 30 years of understanding and history of the workings of the console market. It was believed that consoles sold primarily on the back of their software, and if there was no appealing software to buy them for, because you could get that appealing software somewhere else, then why bother spending money on a proprietary, bespoke, closed system? But Xbox head Phil Spencer had a different understanding of things. What he felt was that consoles and PCs were differentiated enough and each offered enough distinct advantages that each would have its own market appeal inherently. Meaning that by offering games across two different kinds of platforms, Spencer felt that he wasn't cutting his product's market appeal. He was expanding it. The Xbox was no longer the product. It was one of the delivery methods for the product, which were the games themselves. His gambit has paid off. Xbox Game Studios games are more successful now than ever. Sea of Thieves in particular is frequently setting records on Steam. Meanwhile, Xbox hardware sales have not suffered. Yet, they aren't matching PlayStation sales, but they weren't matching PlayStation sales even prior to the PC day and date releases announcement. Xbox One was always trailing behind PS4. Xbox games coming to PC didn't change that pace, and Xbox One continued selling at more or less the same rate as before. Xbox Series X is being outsold by the PS5, but again, there seems to be no active impact to its sales pace caused by the fact that those games that would otherwise be exclusive to the Xbox are available on PC as well. It's still selling roughly on the same pace as Xbox Series X, and judging by the fact that it routinely sells out, it is selling more than Microsoft is able to produce. Would this apply to Sony too? Could they too get away with having their games release on PC day and date? Largely, I think the answer is yes. I think that obviously there will be some who would rather just play on the PC, particularly since PC offers the best version of any game by definition, and because PC is now a one-stop to play pretty much every game ever made in the industry. So why not just consolidate your entire playing to that one platform? But here's the thing, Spencer was right too. Ultimately, PC and consoles are fundamentally different propositions, and for the most people, the perceived and psychological convenience of consoles creates an inherent appeal that PCs do not match. Just as PC gamers love the flexibility and control that platform offers them over their game-playing experience, console players categorically love the convenience of having a platform where things just work, with minimal friction. And of course, while PC has gotten far more convenient in the last decade and consoles have added a lot more friction, in the end, they're still fundamentally different. Playing a game on consoles involves far fewer things to keep track of than playing a game on PC. This isn't meant as a criticism, it's meant as a recognition of the objective difference between the two platforms. Meaning that for most, in fact, console players, PC is a non-factor, just as for most PC players, consoles are a non-factor. The existence of Forza Horizon 5 on the PC doesn't mean anything to someone deciding to buy a console. For them, the choices are Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, which means if they want Forza, Xbox is their only choice. It remains a de facto exclusive for all purposes. Meaning that the bulk of the console buying market, the people who buy FIFA and GTA and those people, they aren't going to be swayed by the PC. The existence of a PC version of a game is meaningless to them, meaning effectively having a PC version of your game loses you no exclusivity for the broader market, such as the broader market is concerned. And you expand your own addressable market by similarly offering your games to a new audience that, just like console players won't ever be swayed by a PC, will never be swayed by consoles. Your games end up selling a lot more, and your hardware sales remain largely unaffected. And those increased software sales are essential. Games cost a lot to make now, and those costs go up every time a new generation starts. They cost so much to make that it is simply not viable for most games to be profitable enough by selling purely to one audience. And this is why every third-party publisher eventually went multi-platform, because the profits gained by selling to every audience were the only way to keep up with scaling costs. They didn't decide to double, triple, or quadruple the hardware they would have to build their games on for fun. Games are simply so expensive that even if they sell a lot on one system, they're limited by only being on that one system. They need a larger addressable audience. This isn't just something I'm pulling out of thin air, by the way. Former PlayStation boss Sean Layden explicitly outlined rising development costs as a reason for concern as far as game development goes. Those development costs rising are presumably also the reason that Sony's biggest games have all committed to cross-gen releases at this point. A game like God of War Ragnarok or Horizon Forbidden West simply costs too much to limit it to just the audience of the presumably 12 to 20 million PS5 owners who exist in the market when those games came out. Even if every single one of those buys God of War or Horizon, they would only match sales for the PS4 games. PS4 games that, as a reminder, were cheaper to produce. And every single PS5 owner won't buy God of War or Horizon, no matter how good they are. Sony's games don't have that kind of attach rate, and they won't because the bulk of people who buy a PlayStation buy it to play FIFA with friends. The easiest way to ensure that these upcoming, more expensive games end up actually standing a chance to be financially viable ventures is to expose them to a broader audience. In this case, a broader audience within the PlayStation universe itself. Now, in the interest of fairness, it is also important to note that Sean Layden said he couldn't see Sony ever doing day and date releases of its games on the PC, though he qualified it with never say never. But the question I'm answering here isn't if Sony will do them, it's should they. And the answer is yes, they should. The benefits are too great, particularly as they continue to push game development costs higher with needless generational bumps every few years. The losses? Minimal. Yes, some people will decide to simply buy their games on PC moving forward, but A, those people are still buying their games, and B, the people who were only purchasing a PlayStation for exclusives were likely never too invested in the ecosystem in the first place. Sony makes most of its money from PlayStation via third-party sales and sales for microtransactions, DLCs, and subscriptions such as PS Plus. If you just own a PS4 to play God of War and The Last of Us and use your PC for everything else, Sony isn't making much money off of you to begin with, since you're not spending money on microtransactions, DLC, third-party games, and probably you're not going to be spending money on PS Plus when you're using your PC for multi-platform multiplayer games to begin with. So Sony doesn't lose anything by you deciding not to buy their hardware, which is often sold at a loss to begin with. Don't forget that. Particularly if you continue to buy their games on PC anyway. So I think it would be beneficial for Sony to do this in the long run. I actually think that they will eventually. Not right away, it'll take some time, but PS5 development costs will continue to go up, and Sony's games on PC have all been huge successes and will presumably continue to be even more so as more and more high-profile releases make the jump to the platform. And at some point, Sony will presumably come to the same conclusion that Xbox did, that PC and console are differentiated audiences. There's not as much overlap or potential for cross-pollination there. The best thing to do is to serve both simultaneously and rake in the money. Everyone wins. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, now's a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking that bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we will see you next time right here on Gaming Bolt.